Hey guys, and welcome to a short video I wanted to make about my Total War Warhammer 3 top 5 wish list. Now, I've made it into a top 5 because there's a lot of things I want to see in Total War Warhammer 3, a lot of things I think we're going to get, a lot of things I'm a little bit less certain on. But, you know, I thought breaking it down into a top 5 makes it a much more bite-sized video. So we're going to have a little battle in the background between myself up against Zeus, who is in charge of Chaos, and I'm, of course, the mighty Lizardmen with an all-skink build. But anyway, now onto the list. So, number 1 is improvements to the multiplayer system. That includes ladder, the scoring system for it, and some more systems I think they can implement. The current scoreboard system doesn't seem to really kind of reflect how good necessarily players are, just technically on what type of builds they can bring to win the most matchups as quickly as possible. And I think it's a little bit archaic now, the way the game is run with the quick battle system, and I think there's much easier ways that they can do that. Now, I'm not a master of designing games myself, but many people have said countless games have a better scoring system, so I think they could definitely make improvements to multiplayer. One thing I would like to suggest, which, well, if anyone from CE actually sees this, but one thing I would like to see and I wish for on my wish list is that they implement almost like a challenge system in the same way that the website challenge works, where it allows you to set up tournaments to allow people who aren't even, running a tournament, they don't need a host, they can just hop into a tournament. When there's enough players, the tournament just kicks off. And also a system for the host then just to set how many games there are going to be, what the rules are, who picks and bans, all that type of nice, easy stuff. It make a really easy way of hosting games, and I think it'd be much easier than using a third party like Challenge. It's just a simple thing to implement into the game. So that is going to be my number 1, just general improvements to multiplayer overall. Now, I understand it's mainly a campaign game, but I think multiplayer helps the longevity of the game. So number 2, speaking of longevity, I think the development they did with the Vampirates and bringing them in and really fleshing out a faction which wasn't really used on tabletop. I know they were used in some special events and so forth, but they did such a fantastic job with the Vampirates. I really want to see either some Chaos Dowie, or preferably both, Chaos Dowie and the Hobgoblins. I think they could be a really cool faction. Both of them incredibly limited in lore, but they are deep down in there, and I think CA can do a really fantastic job, just like they have done with multiple factions so far, like Norska, fleshing them out and bringing them to the big screen. So I think those two factions, and there's a few more as well, like Araby and so forth, that they could bring into the game. And I think they just need to keep doing that to keep the game having that longevity. Because apart from those guys, we really only have Ogre Kingdoms and Demons left to come that were playable on tabletop. So I think they need to get creative, but I think they're going to be doing it and giving us a lot of more DLCs in the future and so forth. And I think that could be a really cool addition. So, number 3 is continued development of Game 1 and 2 factions. They've done this relatively well in Total War Warhammer 2, but a few factions have been left behind, much like the Wood Elves, Greenskins, Beastmen, and so forth. And there's a lot of problems as well with Norska and their lack of legendary lords. So I feel like they need to keep doing this to keep the multiplayer scene alive, and as previously stated, I think the multiplayer scene is really what gives the game its full-on longevity. Of course, campaign is huge at the start, but people eventually complete all the campaigns and, they want to test their steel online. So I think continuing those developments, continuing updates, I like the idea that they've been doing so far of crossovers with Total Warhammer 2 factions and Total Warhammer 1 factions like the Lizardman and Empire. I think it's a really good game and a good excuse to buff up those early game factions. So, number 4 is going to be story-driven campaigns. I thought the Vortex campaign was a real huge step in the right direction, but the latest DLCs have been another huge step in story-driven campaigns, giving everyone their own goals. It really adds a lot of character and flavour to the campaigns, which used to get a little bit tiresome after you've done 2 or 3, as you're basically just trying to conquer, settlements, and after a while that becomes a little bit tiring. But with the extra narrative that they brought in, I think it adds a ton more flavour. Once again, longevity and playability factor. They may have noticed I am saying the word longevity a ton, and that is because this is going to be the last Total War Warhammer game. Now, possibly they're going to do a 40k version. I've heard rumours of that, and I really hope that does happen. But because it's the last game, I think they really need to finish with a huge punch and as much content as possible to give this game the long lifespan that it probably does deserve. And lastly on my list of this top 5 is going to be, I'm a little bit controversial on this one, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't want any Age of Sigmar. So number 5, no Age of Sigmar. Now this may be a little bit controversial, I know Age of Sigmar in general is, but the games so far are based off tabletop Warhammer, so just the basic fantasy Warhammer. and they haven't really touched too much on Age of Sigmar stuff. I know story-wise they might lead up to the ending and the end times and all that kind of very, very controversial stuff in the community. But I want them to stay away as much as possible from Age of Sigmar units. Now, it sounds maybe like I'm kind of contradicting myself a little bit, because I've been talking about wanting this game to extend its lifespan as much as possible. What better way to do that just by including more factions and more kind of cool units and whatnot. I have heard Age of Sigmar has started to gain quite a lot of popularity on tabletop, but maybe not so much in the lore still. So just because it's so controversial and that I think the game is so kind of well done and well balanced lore-wise, I don't want any Age of Sigmar infiltrating in just yet. Maybe my mind on that one could be changed a little bit, perhaps, if it is done incredibly well. But nostalgia has taken over, and me from 10-15 years ago playing tabletop fantasy, I kind of just want it to stick to those factions. So that is my top 5 Total War Warhammer 3 wishlist. So improvements to multiplayer, Chaos or Hobgoblin Dowie, and expanding those factions in general, the ones which are there in lore but not kind of fleshed out fully. Continued development of Game 1 and 2 factions, story-driven campaign, and no Age of Sigmar. So I'd really like to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section on what are your guys' top 5, top 3, whatever you want to say, wish list for Total War Warhammer 3. When do you think it's going to be released, and what factions do you want to see? Of course, we will be covering it on the channel. I'm looking very much forward to it. Really excited to see what new factions they bring out, because of course Ogre Kingdoms, Demons, they're pretty much nailed on, but I think everything else is up in the air a little bit. So I'm really excited to see in which direction they take it. So guys, peace, thank you for tuning in. If you did enjoy this top 5 list, please do give it a big old thumbs up, and it knows that you want to see this type of content in the future. Until next time guys, peace, and stay awesome.